Hello guys, in this video we will set up Redux Thunk in Next.js project. Redux is basically a state of an application and Thunk is a middleware that allows to do side effects before the state is mutated. Actions in Redux can only return objects. Thunk middleware allows us to return a function from Redux action. In this function we can have logic, make API calls and do other things. Let's install dependencies. Yarn add Redux, React Redux, Redux Thunk, Redux Dev Tools, extension, and we also will install Nextjs library to make API calls. Let's create store folder, and in this folder we'll put new file index.js. And let's paste our code here. Save our changes. So in this index.js file we are creating a store, and you can see the function initStore takes our reducers, initial state of the store, and applies middleware, Thunk middleware. So initialize store function basically takes care of initializing the store on the server side as well as on the client side. And in the end, create a custom hook, use store that will return initialized store and use memo here, and only rerun this function if initial state changes. In the stores folder, let's create types.js file, so it will have our action types. The reason we're assigning our actions to constants is so we don't misspell them, or somebody else who's going to work with us doesn't misspell them. Also in the stores folder, let's create reducers.js file. And this is code for our reducers.js. ESLint complained about, it says the default parameter should be last. We can probably do a quick fix here and disable this for the entire file. In this file we have our reducers. You can see you have counter reducer that increments, decrements, and resets the counter. And we also have a quote of the day reducer. This reducer sets the quote of the day. At the end, we use combined reducers that we import from Redux, and we return our reducers combining them together. Sometimes it makes sense to separate reducer in a separate file, but for our applications we don't have that many reducers, so we can have them in one file. Finally, we create actions in storage folder. So we import types from the types file, and then we use the type right here so we don't misspell it. The first action is going to be set quote, and what action usually takes, it takes payload and then returns an object, as I mentioned before, and this object has type and it also has a payload. Sometimes actions don't have to take any parameters, like for example increment, decrement, or reset counter. All they do return just type. So then another action is getQuote. This action has Thunk middleware, and it takes our Nextjs library to make an API call, and then also returns a function that takes their parameters dispatch and getState. Dispatch will be used to dispatch the action setQuote, and getState is used to get the current state of the application. So you can see the logic goes as following. We get state from the getState function, and if the state has already quote of the day, we return. We just don't do anything. However, if there is no quote of the day, what we do is make an API call to this URL, quotes.rest/QOD. When we receive data, we basically go to the quote of the day, we scoop it up, and then we dispatch our action setQuote. And we pass to this action our payload, where we have quote and the author. In case we catch an error, we just set a default message first, there was an error. Unless there is error response coming from the API, then we changed our message and we put the response status in there. And then we also dispatch action setQuote, where we just put error message. These two actions, one of them have middleware set getQuote, and the other one setQuote doesn't. We can take a look at actions for our counter, and they're pretty straightforward. Increment count, decrement count, and reset count, and we don't even send any payload, just to set the type. Now let's connect our store to the application. Let's create store first, and we need to import it from our store, not React Redux. And in the use store hook, we will put page props initial Redux state. So next we need to create a provider. Let's get provider store is equals to store. And we can wrap our component in a provider. And then let's be sure to import provider as well from React Redux. Our Redux is set up. All it took 4 files and also changes in underscore app.jsx file. Now let's test it. Let's create counter JSX file in pages folder. This counter file creates a page. It has simple counter with the increment, decrement, and reset buttons. Let's also create quote JSX page for our quote of the day. This file has a little bit more interesting logic. So first, it grabs the quote of the day from our store using useSelector. We do useEffect to dispatch getQuote action. And in this getQuote action, we also need to put our Axios. So let's put Axios, and we'll import it from our Axios library. So now, as you remember, or let's say in actions, we have this getQuote that will make an API call if the quote is not already set in the store application store. And here the template basically has a logic. So if there is a quote of the day, quote, it's going to display that quote, but if not, it's going to be saying loading quote of the day and waiting till the API call resolves. And the last but not least, index.jsx file. Let's create a menu, and we can put it right after h1 tag. So this is going to be the menu right over here. One link for quote of the day and the other link for counter. And let's import link from next link. And now ESLint is complaining at us. And let's go ahead and disable this rule. Turn it off. Now we're all set. Let's run our application. In a browser, let's go to localhost 3000. And we can see our app right here. So we can go to counter and count up or down or up and reset. We can go back to our home page, click on a quote of the day. We can wait till the quote is loading, so API takes a little while. And now we have a quote of the day. When we go back, we can go back to counter, back again, go to our quote of the day, and you can see, since we already have the quote, our application state has quote already. There is no request made to the API, and we just bring the quote from our storage. And this is how you configure Redux and Thunk in your Next.js application. As usual, you can find the code in a GitHub repo, Next.js starter, and this link will be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.